Imagine a world not too long ago where justice wasn't just blind, it was completely bewildered. A world where lawyers would argue passionately, witnesses would be sworn in, and judges would deliberate with solemn faces, all to determine the guilt or innocence of a pig. Yes, you heard that right. Not a metaphor, not some abstract legal principle, an actual, snorting, mud-loving, bacon-to-be pig. Welcome to the medieval justice system, where if you thought human trials were messy, you hadn't seen anything until a goat got a subpoena. Our story begins in the year 1457, in the sleepy little town of Falaise, Normandy. A seemingly ordinary day until horror struck. A young child, innocently wandering near a pigsty, was attacked. Not by a wolf, not by a bandit, but by one of the town's domestic pigs. The child didn't survive. Now, in modern times, we'd call this a tragic accident, perhaps blame the parents for negligence or the farmer for poor animal control. But this was the 15th century. This was a direct, malicious act. This was murder. And the perpetrator? That pig, by all accounts, was going to pay. Because apparently pigs in 15th century France were fully aware of the legal ramifications of infanticide. Who knew? What followed was not a trip to the butcher, but a full, formal legal proceeding. The pig of Falaise was arrested. It was charged with murder, and it was put on trial. A human trial with human judges and human witnesses, and presumably a very confused pig. Now, before you dismiss the entire medieval era as completely insane, there was a twisted logic behind this. You see, in medieval Christian Europe, animals were believed to be part of God's creation. They possessed souls, though lesser ones, and they were subject to divine and human law. If an animal caused harm, especially severe harm, it wasn't just an animal being an animal. It was an animal transgressing. It might even be a tool of the devil himself. And if a law was broken, justice had to be served, regardless of the species of the offender. It was about re-establishing cosmic order. Imagine the court clerks trying to get a pig's signature on a deposition, or asking for its plea, "Guilty or not guilty, Mr. Oinkerton." These weren't just informal scoldings. These were often ecclesiastical courts run by the church, or secular courts run by the state. The courts would issue summonses, hire defense lawyers, yes, even for rats, and examine evidence. The goal wasn't just punishment. It was often to drive out evil or restore purity to the community. Because apparently, a convicted pig could contaminate the moral fabric of a village. Let's get back to our pig in Falaise. The trial was extensive. Witnesses testified, neighbors recounted the events, the child's parents, in their grief, provided testimony. The pig itself was even dressed in human clothes for the trial, as if to highlight its temporary status as a human-like legal entity. Perhaps it was a tiny hat and a little tunic. We can only imagine the discomfort. The defense, if there was one beyond the pig's bewildered grunts, would have been limited. A lawyer might argue for extenuating circumstances, perhaps a lack of proper fencing, or that the pig was provoked. But typically, if the evidence of harm was clear, the animal was doomed. And in 1457, the evidence against the Falaise pig was damning. It was found guilty. The sentence? Execution by hanging. A truly ignominious end for an animal that, a few months prior, was probably just trying to find some truffles. The Falaise pig wasn't an isolated incident. Animal trials were surprisingly common throughout the medieval period. Rats and weevils, In one famous case in Autun, France, a swarm of rats was put on trial for damaging barley crops. The lawyer for the rats, Barthélemy Chassany, a real historical figure, mind you, actually argued that they couldn't appear in court because they feared being eaten by cats on the way. The trial was postponed. Locusts, entire swarms of insects, were excommunicated by the church in some regions, ordered to leave the land or face divine wrath, which for a rat, I'm sure was just devastating. Donkeys. In the 17th century, a donkey in France was sentenced to death for unnatural acts alongside its human accomplice, highlighting the moral panic surrounding certain perceived sins. Cows, charged with goring people. Roosters. Seriously, roosters were put on trial for unnatural acts if they laid an egg, a rare hormonal anomaly believed to be a spawn of the devil. The rooster would be burned at the stake. Because nothing says fair trial like accusing a barnyard animal of witchcraft. These trials often involved detailed legal documents, court records, and official sentences. They weren't just isolated acts of superstition, they were integral, if bizarre, components of the medieval legal framework. And the punishments? Oh, they were fittingly dramatic. Hanging. Common for larger animals like pigs or cattle, the execution would often be public, sometimes with the animal dressed in clothes to serve as a moral lesson to the human populace and, presumably, to other animals. Burning. Reserved for animals associated with witchcraft or demonic influence, like the unfortunate egg-laying roosters. The rooster would be burned at the stake. Because nothing says fair trial like accusing a barnyard animal of witchcraft. Excommunication or banishment. For smaller creatures like insects or rodents, they'd be formally ordered to leave the district. Mutilation? In some cases, an animal might have a limb severed before execution, or its body displayed as a warning. The logic was consistent. If the animal had been tried like a human, it would be punished like a human. This reflected a deeply ingrained belief in a hierarchical, ordered universe, where even a grunting pig had its place and its responsibilities. So, the next time you see a stray dog digging in your trash, or a squirrel pilfering from your bird feeder, just be thankful you're not living in medieval Europe. Because that squirrel might not just face a stern scolding, it might face a summons, a lawyer, and a very public date with the gallows. If you found this trip into legal absurdity fascinating, smash that like button and subscribe for more strange tales from history.